ineffectiveness of the United States prison system. It is said that no one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. These are words spoken by Nelson Mandela. I made a mistake and broke the law, which resulted in having to spend 7 months of my life in the New York State prison system. Prior to my experience, I did not quite understand the meaning behind those words spoken by Mandela. I can tell you now that those words couldn't be any more true. What I witnessed was a broken system with minimal and ineffective rehabilitation programs for inmates. Drug-addicted inmates were given no counseling or treatment to help ensure that they would live sober life upon release. Instead, they had easy access to an overflowing supply of drugs. These drugs were smuggled in through packages, visits, or corrupt COs. There were drug dealers exchanging contact information with the users to build their clientele for when they are released. The inmates that had violent crimes, they only appeared to be more violent in prison. Many of the inmates I saw enter the prison system had little to no education or job training. Upon re-entry into society, these inmates will be less desirable to employ than they were before they were incarcerated. It is inevitable that there are going to be people that break the law, and it is the job of the judicial system to make sure that society is protected from potential harm that criminals can cause. Many times, prison is the only way to protect society from falling victim of the crimes that are being committed. However, most inmates in the prison system, they do have a release date, meaning there will come a day that they are free and back in society. If there has been minimal rehabilitation for the men and women incarcerated, then nothing will change. They will be released and continue to break laws, leaving society at risk and creating a high recidivism rate. Inmates are not going to change themselves without the tools necessary to do so. Without change, there is nothing preventing a vicious cycle of repeat offenders. The United States prison system has inadequate programs geared towards rehabilitating inmates and is therefore ineffective at changing the core of the problems that cause crime. America has the highest incarceration rate in the world. According to VERA, there are approximately 1,489,600 people incarcerated through both state and federal incarceration. The United States, ironically, only has 5% of the world's population, yet they have more than 20% of the world's incarcerated population. The United States Department of Justice reports more than 650,000 ex-offenders are released from prison every year, and studies show that approximately 2/3 will likely be rearrested within 3 years of release. This proves the inadequacy of the prison system to rehabilitate inmates for re-entry into society. Failure of the prison system to rehabilitate inmates has created overpopulation in prisons and severe financial and socio-economical problems due to the cost of imprisonment. Do you know how the lack of rehabilitating inmates is affecting society? The prison system costs American taxpayers $80 billion a year. According to the United States Department of Education, state and local spending on prisons and jails has increased at a triple the rate of funding for public education for preschools through grade 12 in the last 3 decades. Although the rate of violent and property crimes has decreased 45% over the last 2 decades, according to the Hamilton Report from Washington, D.C., the cost has continued to rise. The consistent rise in costs, even with the drop in specific crimes, is a direct result of mandatory sentencing and repeat offenders. About 45% of the federal inmates and 77% of the state inmates will be rearrested within 5 years of release from prison. This is a statistic from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. $80 billion. $80 billion could potentially be enough to pay every teacher's salary in America for a year. Yet we're spending that on a prison system, with little of that money going to ensuring that offenders do not reoffend upon release. Mass incarceration is not only affecting our nation financially, it also affects society socially and spiritually. It is a humane issue, and in order to understand the depth of the problem, Americans must be educated on the significance of the problems faced by rehabilitating and not rehabilitating inmates. 1 out of every 35 people in America are incarcerated. 1 out of every 25 children have a parent that is incarcerated. 77% of inmates will be released and re-enter society. Regardless of how long they must serve in prison or what kind of crime they committed, one day they will rejoin society. Many incarcerated Americans have a history of mental illness. According to a report from the Justice Department, roughly 12 inmates die per day while incarcerated. In local jails, the main cause of death is suicide. There should be intense counseling services offered to help these inmates with severe mental disorders. It is society's obligation to our nation to have empathy concerning the life and quality of life of our fellow Americans. It should never be accepted for someone to lose their life because they did not receive adequate medical attention, whether their disability is physical or mental. Studies suggest that ex-convicts that can find employment and housing are less likely to return to a life of crime. Norway is an example of a country that uses this statistic to benefit reentry of inmates. In Norway, inmates can begin to work 18 months prior to their release. In America, there are 27,000 state licensing rules that prevent convicted felons from securing employment. These licensing regulations affect many professions. Among these professions affected are barbers and roofers. Even though Norway only locks up their worst criminals that are more likely to reoffend, Norway has a lower recidivism rate than America. Oregon is an American state that believes that programs to reform felons are measured for effectiveness. Because of this, they have a recidivism rate less than half as high as California's. Americans should embrace proven ways to rehabilitate inmates to become successful, productive citizens. It should be the crimes American has biased on, as opposed to the criminals. How can our nation change the statistics of repeat offenders? Einstein said, "We keep doing the same thing, but we keep expecting different results." That's called insanity. When it comes to mass incarceration, our prison system is creating insanity, a system filled with chaos and dysfunction. Changing the way the system is designed is the only way to create a new outcome and promote successful reentry of inmates into society. We as a nation need to think differently. We must stop thinking of criminals as a burden on society. Instead, we should concentrate on the change we could potentially make on how the criminal justice system is ran. If society considered the positive effects that could happen if inmates were rehabilitated properly for reentry, if we ask the question right now whether inmates are being rehabilitated to re-enter society and live as productive citizens, the answer would, without a question of a doubt, be no. Unfortunately, due to the lack of programs and therapy in prisons, inmates are coming out worse than they were when they began their journey through the prison system, creating more of a risk of causing harm to citizens. We need to be the leaders and the voice in this world of change. According to an article, Economic Perspectives on Incarceration and the Criminal Judicial System, crime and poverty go hand in hand, and a lack of economic opportunity often promotes the rise of crime. This article continues to say that if employment opportunities with adequate wages were available, then the necessity and relative attractiveness of criminal activity would decline. It suggests that if Americans invested in education, it will reduce crime by improving the future economic opportunities and by altering the prosperity of children to engage in risky behaviors. Even though they are not specifically designed to reduce crime, the ultimate effect of them will be to reduce crime. If policies are implemented that support employment, wage growth, and educational attainment, policies that constructively achieve these goals will have a large impact on the crime rate decreasing. What will happen if America does not change the prison system to incorporate rehabilitation? There will be no change in the outcome. If we do not change the way things are ran, things will stay the same. Many inmates lack the basic life skills necessary to be a productive citizen upon release. This hinders their ability to gain adequate employment and housing. Crime rates will continue to rise because ex-offenders will continue to repeat crimes, causing new charges and new sentencing. Often the crimes committed by a repeat offender are more serious than the crimes previously committed. This will directly affect the overpopulation of the prison system. It will also create the prisons to become understaffed. If rehabilitation occurs, we will see a positive change. Inmates will have a smoother transition through reentry, resulting in less chance of recidivism. Prisons will be more cost-effective and the crime rate will decrease. What can we do as a nation to promote change within the prison system? Let's start by educating ourselves. We cannot possibly be part of the solution if we do not have the knowledge to understand the problem. We can remove the biasness around convicted criminals and start treating them like human beings. We can talk open and honestly about the problems inmates face. Brainstorming ideas to solve many other problems has resulted in great solutions. Well, this is a problem that needs a solution. Let's start talking about it.